As a mother or father, should you have an unconditional love for your child? We could debate all day about the natural instinct to love that comes from being a parent. But I have 3 cases for you that may sway the dialogue. These 3 subjects aren't what we'd call pictures of paternal and maternal care, as their children have fallen victim to their lack of humanity. Or maybe I'm trying to sway the debate, and none of these atrocities actually happened. That's up to you to decide. Are the following stories fact or fiction?
The line that divides the factual from the unreal has long since blurred. The tales we once thought fantastical, now implanted as true. To decipher verity from the imagined, you must break from the ordinary and consider a universe where the outlandish prevails. Can you expand your mind to see beyond our perceived reality? Can you decide what's fact or fiction?
To be able to hurt a child takes a certain kind of evil. Andre Lamb, unbeknownst to his girlfriend, Kelly Rogers, was exactly that kind of evil. During an argument one winter day, as newborn Talia lay peacefully nearby, Andre showed just how heinous a person he really was.
That child isn't mine. It wasn't the first time Andre lashed out at her, but Kelly saw something different in his eyes. It was a rage he had never released before, and as the chair came sliding across the floor at her under the force of his kick, she realized what it was. He was afraid, maybe of the prospect of being a father, maybe of giving up his freedom. Whatever it was evident in the way he looked at her. He continued to shout, to deny, and to find little odds and ends to throw at her. But Kelly had grown used to it and knew she just had to leave the house. In her crib nearby, baby Talia was silent, unfazed by her father's rage. Even when Kelly picked her up, despite Andre's increasingly louder and more forceful tone, Talia simply cooed in her mother's arms. Kelly did her best to smile at her baby as she moved the two closer to the front door, hoping to leave Andre's presence until he calmed down. When her hand grasped the handle, though, she felt a strong grip pull her back. "Admit you cheated, and that baby ain't mine." "Enough, Andre. Jesus." Kelly tried to pull away, but Andre kept her near. As his anger peaked, he ripped Talia away from Kelly. She tried to protest, to get her crying infant back. But something struck her suddenly and left her dazed. At first, she couldn't comprehend what hit her so hard. Andre's hands were tied up with the baby. Then it hit her again. Talia's tiny body struck her shoulder, then the side of her face. After the second strike, the baby's crying stopped. But Kelly's sobs echoed through the house. Andre relentlessly slammed Talia's body against Kelly's, his hands gripping her legs like a handle. As Kelly faded from the world and everything turned to a black haze, she could feel the specks of blood spattering against her body. In one last horrific thought, she wondered if it were her own or her baby's.
A disgusting, vile act, unforgivable and punishable by the most drastic of measures. But did it happen? Was Andre that much of a monster and that scared of being a parent that he snapped? We'll find out whether this atrocity actually happened in a bit. But in the meantime, leave us a comment with your thoughts and vote using the on-screen card. For now, we're moving to a different part of the world, one where the supernatural resides, at least according to Danny and Nancy Elm. When they conceived baby Dante, the Elm family was overjoyed and hopeful about the future. Months after his birth, however, the stresses of being a family may have caused the Elms to lose touch with reality.
The moment baby Dante entered his life, Danny Elm knew something was wrong. The way he cried, the way he looked up at his parents, the energy in the house. Danny could sense it, an evil emanating from his newborn son. They never spoke about it at first, but as he watched Nancy interact with him, he could tell she felt the same way. Deep down, they both tried to rationalize it as the jitters of being new parents, but those fleeting, hopeful thoughts were always subdued by the grim reality that they knew Dante wasn't a sweet, innocent boy. To the rest of the world, however, Dante was just an innocent baby boy. His parents, on the other hand, had a problem. In Nancy's last month of pregnancy, the two panicked. They weren't ready for what was to come, and neither knew how to handle the fear they felt. So Danny turned to his brother, a purveyor of a white powder that would help them escape their concerns. It wasn't the first time that they had done cocaine, and just like the last time, they reacted with paranoia. Unfortunately for Dante, it became a habit they couldn't kick, even after his birth, and their suspicions soon fell on him. "There's something wrong with our baby," they agreed. Nancy was the first to address the growing concern they both had. What followed was a back and forth of outlandish discussion that bred a preposterous and damning theory. Baby Dante was haunted by the devil. There was no reasoning with the couple, mostly because there was no one of sound mind to introduce reason. After a particularly bad day, one they both blamed on Dante's devilish possession, they realized what had to be done. In the dead of night, as their neighborhood slept soundly, Danny and Nancy dug a small pit in their backyard and lined it with leaves and whatever small branches they could find. Then they proceeded to cleanse their lives. It wasn't Dante's cries that woke the Elms' neighbor up, but rather the smell of smoke that wafted in through his bedroom window. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. Dante's tiny body was charred, his cries silenced, and according to the Elms, his soul set free, and their sanctuary returned to normal.
Was Dante really the victim of drug-induced paranoia? Could the Elms really have lost all sense of reality and thought their child needed saving from the devil? Or are we just aiming to shock you with this story of parental murder? As you're postulating whether the last tale was true, we have one final gruesome story to tell. Divorce can turn many people ugly, especially those that aren't really all there in the first place. Arthur Malone told his soon-to-be ex-wife Phoebe that he would get everything during the divorce, but she never realized how far he'd actually go.
Arthur was far from a good husband. 2 affairs and 5 wasted years later, Phoebe realized it was time to finally let him go. Complicating matters, however, was the bulge in her belly, the only good thing their disastrous marriage produced. The two had been so busy going at each other's throats that neither took a moment to name the miracle that grew within her, though she knew he would grow to be a real man, unlike his father. The last meeting she was forced into having with Arthur detailed the separation of assets. "Half of everything," he kept telling his lawyer, despite insistence that he wouldn't be entitled to anything. He refused to accept that answer, refused to let Phoebe walk away with anything. "She's to blame too, you know." No matter how hard he tried to blame Phoebe, so few actually believed it. It wouldn't matter, though. Arthur was hell-bent on getting what he wanted, and he wanted his son. Since Arthur moved out, Phoebe was forced to take care of herself. She didn't have many friends, and her family stopped talking to her after her marriage. Even they saw the kind of man he was. So she lived in their considerably large home with no one but the baby in her belly. She hadn't heard from Arthur in a week when he appeared on her doorstep uninvited and unannounced. "Not tonight, Arthur. We can fight again with the lawyers present." "Just let me in, Phoebe. We should talk without them." His voice was calm and reminded her of the good times they did have. She opened the door, and when she saw him, the first thing she noticed were the beads of sweat on his brow. His eyes kept shifting, and despite the calm in his voice, his body seemed incredibly nervous. "What's up?" Without another word from him, he barged into her house, pushing her to the ground, and slammed the door behind him. "You're not taking him," he snapped. Knowing she was about to scream, Arthur straddled her pregnant belly and placed a hand over her mouth. His knees pinned her arms to the ground, and as he stared intently down at her, his free hand produced a knife from his belt loop. Her screams were muffled against his hand, and though she thrashed, she couldn't break free. He plunged the knife into her stomach and dragged it through her flesh. Phoebe's body started to go limp the more he cut into her, trying to dig out his son. Before he could finish what he came there for, the strength to do so left him. Staring down at his ex-wife's eyes rolling back into her head, blood and other fluids soaking their clothing, his nerves cracked. Just as quickly as he had barged in, Arthur ran to his car, leaving behind more than enough evidence to be convicted of the murder of Phoebe and their unborn child.
Poor Phoebe. Did she overlook Arthur's more dangerous tendencies? Or was the possible loss of his son enough to drive him to murder? Could someone really think they could simply cut out a baby? Surely they'd have to be in a demented state of mind. We'll find out whether Arthur's horrific acts were real or not. But as we gear up for the reveal, leave us a comment with your thoughts and vote now on screen.
Are you ready to find out if you can decipher between fact or fiction? Let's look back at tonight's 3 stories and find out which were born from reality and which were fabrications of the imagination.
Thinking back to our first story, that of Andre and Kelly, did you think anyone could essentially use a baby as a club? If you're sane enough and think that's the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard and couldn't possibly be true, I hate to say, it is. The story is that of Alexander Forba, a man charged with killing his 3-day-old baby, Precious, by using her to hit his girlfriend. Despite his disgusting act, Forba was released a year later when girlfriend and mother, Jones Aqua, refused to testify. How about that terrible story of cocaine addicts and new parents, Danny and Nancy? Could you imagine someone being that far gone that they think their baby is a vessel for the devil? Though we could possibly make a case for it, this story never happened. Finally, we have the atrocious act of Arthur against his unborn son and ex-wife Phoebe. We know that someone can think it's possible to cut a baby from its mother's womb, as seen in the September 2017 murder of Angelique Sutton. Despite that, though, it's not real, and this story was fabricated from our imaginations.
How well did you do in tonight's video? Did you look past the deception of our world and define the off-blurred line that struggles to separate lies from the truth? Let us know in the comment section below. And should you find the urge to test your perceptions again, be sure to subscribe and join us next time when we ask you to decide what's fact or fiction.